episode of the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show, the show where we talk about all the crazy stupid stuff that people do in marketing and how you can not do crazy stupid marketing, but instead do smart, meaningful, awesome marketing that is in alignment with your business and who you are. If you are joining us for the first time on the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show, we are super happy to have you here. If you are joining us again on the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show, we are super happy to have you here. And while this show might look like some talking heads talking at you, this is not what this show is about. There's this little chat. I don't know which direction I'm pointing, but there should be a chat on your screen somewhere where you can get into the conversation. And because the things that we talk about here on the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show are generally considered in the category of opening cans of worms. The more voices we can get in the conversation, the more we all get to take away from the conversation. So if you are live and you are listening in, we would love to hear your thoughts, your perspectives, your comments, your questions, your insights, your knowledge, anything you would love to share with us today in those comments. We would really, really love to hear your voice today. And today, what are we talking about? What do you guys think we should talk about today? Did you guys notice something a little bit different? We have 2-for-1 guests today. Double the pleasure, double your fun. That's not copyrighted, right? This is the marketing show. Maybe it was. I don't know if it is anymore. But anyway, that is a good example of a brand experience that some of you might associate with a specific brand. And today what we're talking about is the brand experience continuum. Because while often in marketing, we might consider ourselves the owners of the brand experience, there's a lot of different places where brand experiences happen with your brand, both internal and external. So we are talking with Chelsea and Leona today, who have some marketing background, some HR background, and some more awesome stuff they'll share with us to talk about what does this look like from a brand experience continuum, and more importantly, what are the risks of not looking at brand experience as if it's on a continuum and only in a silo, and how we can broaden our thoughts to continue this continuum, create this continuum, I think is what I was going for. So ladies, before we get too deep into the conversation, I'll give you each an opportunity to introduce yourselves. Chelsea, your name is first, so you get to go first.
All right, amazing. So I'm Chelsea Smith, marketing manager at Forward Level here. And I have a really exciting journey, I think, in marketing. It's been about 17 years or so now in marketing. So really have had the pleasure of doing everything from agency to being in-house in large kind of almost mid-market enterprise-ish type companies, and really been flourishing, I think, with being on kind of lean, mean machines of like small dynamic marketing teams where, we all just roll up our sleeves and have a lot of fun and try to drive as much impact as humanly possible, right? So a lot of my background has been around kind of a lot of brand development, a lot of digital marketing, a lot of really nerdy stuff when it comes to just digging into like the customer journey. It's been quite fun. I've even had a little bit of experience digging into sort of product design and development, which is also very fun, very nerdy for, just thinking about how do people experience that product, right? So I think I'm really excited just to dig into everything around, the brand continuum today. I think there's a lot of really cool things we're going to dig into. So I'll hand it over to Leona.
Thank you so much for hosting us today, Tracy. Yeah. My name is Leona Moser. I work together with Chelsea at Forward Level, but my, official title is I'm a chartered professional in human resources. And oh my gosh, why is HR here? That's weird. I have as soon as HR is in the room, it is weird. So like a disclaimer, I guess, for all of that. But marketing and HR have a lot of parallels. The employee journey, the customer journey. We're going to get into a lot of that today. And like Chelsea, I started my career when I was 5, so 17 years later, I've also had
Haven't we all? That child labor, it's alive and well.
I've also worked, I've worked on large internal corporate pretty corporate HR teams all the way down to sort of small one-woman show, including some consulting type of things. And what I think I love about the work that I do as an HR professional is, not only getting to collaborate with my friends on the marketing team when we're doing something really cool, like we have a common audience. It's people, right? And so a lot of the strategy in marketing, when it's done well, the strategy in HR, we can talk and overlap and really combine our powers for some pure awesomeness. So that's why we're here today.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about, before we jump into the whole continuum piece, let's talk about people, because you mentioned that, Leona, as part of your intro, and marketing too is about people. These are industries that are about people. So even if we kind of extrapolate the individual like tasks maybe that historically both departments have been looking at, like what's the benefit to just aligning on the idea that this is about people?
A lot of the benefits that I see, I mean, we think externally and internally, right? Like a lot of times our friends on the marketing team are concerned with external people, potential employees, potential clients or customers or consumers of our brand or our product or service. And on the other side of that, when we think about it, or when I think about it through the HR lens, whether that's from a recruitment and talent attraction piece, or whether you're engaging and communicating with employees internally, aligning with a brand and aligning with those values and making sure that what you are on the inside is in alignment with what you are perceived to be on the outside is really important. And how we see that is sort of when the inverse is true. So when that's not apparent, you really know, right?
Yeah, I would definitely say that's true. It's interesting. So a friend of mine, another friend of mine who's an HR consultant, posted on LinkedIn earlier today about how brands are about profits and cultures are about people. And I mean, you guys could probably guess I have something to say about that. But my experience of that was like, my experience was I don't see one. But is there a benefit to like actually calling these two things different things? Like, is a brand and a culture a different thing, or is that actually the same thing? What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Well, I do think like your brand experience is like shaped by both like the interactions you have with individuals, the culture that is instilled like from the top down, really, like from, whatever the owner of the organization wants it to be. And then also the way it organically evolves through its people, right? So
it's brought to life.
Yeah. And I think too, like, I think if you get to the core of that, you start to think about like having that value alignment of, bringing in like-minded people. Ideally, they're all going to be aligned to that kind of culture and that kind of thinking, and they're going to buy into it and emanate it out like with your clients, right? And give them a similar experience. So I always kind of think of it too as like, you have to treat your people extremely well, because like, you have to make sure they're feeling fulfilled. They're feeling like they are able to get recognition in their career and be seen as all the great things they're doing, so that they feel satisfied, they feel jazzed up, they feel bought into the larger vision and picture of what you're doing. And then they can continue to like share that with your customers, right? That buzz, that excitement. So I do think there's something to be said about like looking at this from an inside out perspective, even from a marketing perspective. And I think so many people think that marketing comes in and is more about like the external brand and market, but I think we have an accountability to look equally internally with how people are experiencing it, and ideally like breaking down those silos, right, Leona? So it's like we can actually start to collaborate and work together, because we do know when like even our own lived experience is that like when, Leona and I are working on something internal together, it's way better because we look at it from two different lenses that kind of create like a whole, if you will.
Right? They like overlap sort of.
Yeah.
Because but like what I hear too when I think about brand is I think about like the why, right? People that really align highly with a brand, whether they're all wearing that brand name of clothing or they're all, in the airport lounge on that brand of laptop computer. Like it's kind of a, it's a part of your identity, right? You're I don't know, there's a connection that you have that's unspoken with other human people through maybe the lens of that brand. So whether that's created and well done as, the camaraderie I hope that you feel as part of your workplace or your workplace culture or through your employer, that is a similar created experience than when a brand is done well. So like, I guess I would disagree that brands are just about profit, because a brand doesn't exist without people within it creating it, concepting it, building it, and without other people on the other side of that experiencing and feeling it, right? So there's the continuum. Okay, podcast, we're done.
Continuum and show. Well, and this is why the thing is really interesting, because I don't know if it's because of like the fact that human brains like to put things into categories, or where the like foundational nature of this comes from, but even this concept of like creating departments, right? And like, you're going to be responsible for speaking to the outside people, and you're going to be responsible for speaking to the inside people, but you guys are going to work together because you're speaking to different people. Or like, I have the same problem with sales and marketing being disconnected, right? Like, what is this? Aren't we all supposed to be working together to achieve a thing? And we create these boundaries that seemingly, in at least the new way of working, don't seem to have that much purpose. And then we also start to make these definitions of like, a brand is this, and like, quite honestly, I don't even know how many definitions of brand I've heard, right? 100 different definitions. Everyone has a different one. And so like, but this is this, and this is this. And really, when we're talking about continuum, the point is that this is not black and white. This
yes,
shades of gray, at least.
And in HR, the answer to everything is also, it depends. See? So like, another thing we share, right?
Well, and I think the concept, because even in this concept of like, it depends, right? I think a lot of times people can interpret that as non-committal, right? Like, you just don't want to choose if this is black or white. But the point is, it's not black or white. It depends on many things. So unless we're talking about the many things that are at play here, then we're really not looking at the picture holistically. We're making this black and white when there's actually no value in it being black and white. What would be more productive is being able to look at it as gray and say like, how do we plot where we are on the continuum, or what different questions do we ask at different parts of the continuum? But we like allow that to exist, because even if we tried not to, it exists anyway.
Yeah, like it's as simple and as complicated as that.
Totally. And I think
this is what we do on this show, by the way.
Yeah, it makes complete sense though.
Yeah. Well, and I think even if you think about like the continuum, it's like there's an element of, in my opinion, like there's like, there's your employee experience, which is kind of its own linear thing, but it's not really linear. I mean, it's a journey, right? Yeah. And then there's also on the flip side of it, kind of your customer journey. And I do think when you start to look at both of those things, there's so much parallels, because at the end of the day, as you mentioned, we're talking about human beings experiencing a brand, right? So there's an element of, I just have early stage awareness of you existing as an organization, right? To all of a sudden now I'm having my first interaction with someone from your company. Like, was that good, bad, ugly, right? Then maybe I'm getting onboarded as a new client or a new employee, right? So you can see where like, it's almost like recruitment, coming into onboarding, coming into like, what is your lived experience then as an employee? What is your lived experience as a customer? Yep. And then ideally we can get them to the point where they've had so many good moments in that continuum that all of a sudden they're becoming raving champions of the brand, and they're telling all their friends when they're out for drinks, like, what an amazing company this is, and it's organic and it's authentic, and they're telling those stories for you, right? They're creating that social proof in market, and it's all because they love working with you. They love your culture. They love your brand, right? They love the people that you've brought into it all.
And it's almost like, I I don't know, underlooked, overlooked experience. Like
Mhm.
if we already perceive and think of this company and brand as being awesome, and then you join them as an employee and you kind of get a peek under the hood or behind the curtains, and then to say like, oh, I'm actually also seeing it on the inside, and it's also great to work there. Like those raving ambassadors, that is, you know, one of those touch points is like, wow, not only maybe was I a client or experiencing the product or something, but then as a separate but parallel experience, working there and seeing the inner workings, also just as awesome. Like that's, you know, some really great credibility, social proof, like that.
Totally.
Yeah.
And you're totally right. You kind of nailed it on the head there, Leona, where it's like you could also have an employee that becomes a client or vice versa.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. So it's like, I don't know, it's like you can create like a harmonious experience for everyone and really look at all the little pieces. And a lot of it can be an element of architecture and like forethought to think about those things.
Consider that at all. Yeah,
right.
Totally.
And then some of it too is just like having everyone kind of educated from the same playbook, if you will, right?
Yeah.
Like educated about like, what is our brand and market? Who are we? What are we about? How do we want to be perceived? What's our messaging in market, right? Like, how do we show up in meetings? And what are the behaviors that we consider to be, you know, acceptable within our organization or encouraged, right? Like, I think all of these things really help. They just all play into like how people consume and experience you both as an individual and as a collective.
Yeah, they all translate to the human experience of the brand, whether that's as an employee or as a consumer or as an onlooker or all three.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think you used a great word there, Chelsea, is architect. Right. So I would think about it, or designed, right? Like, how are these experiences designed?
Yes.
Are they designed to work together, or were they
Are
never?
they designed at all? Right? Like if we're just onboarding people and like we don't even know, hi, who are you? Oh, you work here? Okay, does anyone know you're here? Or do you need a laptop? Like, how are we
in my
designing?
first job? Well, this was back in the days when we had phones on our desks, so just keep that in mind. I did not have a phone or a computer for 3 days. I just had binders of things that I was supposed to read.
Oh no.
And nobody, and like, I didn't have any meetings with anybody or like a leader of sorts, the instruction. And I was like, what is my job? What did I agree to here? This seems weird. And then I was there for 4 years. It was actually pretty good, but the onboarding, rough. But also an interesting point, because like, I'll use a personal example. I'm a huge fan of Peloton. I love my Peloton. It's like one of the best investments I've ever made as far as I'm concerned. And I have applied for jobs at Peloton because I love my Peloton and I love like the instructors and what it seems like they're about and all of those things. But something that was really interesting to me is like their hiring process did not meet my expectations as like a brand champion. So then I was really disappointed in that. And then you're like, well, what is actually going on behind the scenes there? Like, I don't actually know because I didn't go to work there, but like, this did not meet the promise that you make me as a user of this product. So I think this, again, like, this is why I was excited to talk about the brand continuum, because like, you might think that your automated system for resumes doesn't have any impact on your user experience. But it has
we even considered that, I guess, would be my further question, because a lot of times we're not. We're trying to just automate a goal and achieve a thing. And it's like, but if we do truly value people, we can build automation and technology into our processes. And as HR professionals, we absolutely should be, because again, the common set of clients we have with our IT team, who we should also be looking in between silos for while we're doing that with marketing, is people, right? Like, we have the same client group, but like, you're right. And it's not one single thing. It's like this one moment of like, oh, gross. Like, and you can't pinpoint exactly what that is, but like, look at how great your brand experience was until you went, like, that one thing was enough to kind of make you question it all. And like, that's hard. That's not being data that's being tracked.
Yeah.
No. Well, and this is the thing, right? And it is like, it makes me, I'm a marketer, right? Like, it's not unusual for marketers to sell something that's not real on the inside, right? Do you guys remember that House Hippo commercial?
I love the Canadian House Hippo. Yeah.
House Hippo. And I was like, oh, this would be so great there was actually a house hippo. Yeah, and you know it's
I
fake.
love them.
That's the point of it. But like we sell stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And I don't like to put myself into that category, but marketers as a whole, we don't always sell stuff that we know is going to be honored down the rest of the line. And so then when I show up as a like Peloton user and I'm like, well, this is what the trainers are saying, but do they really believe that? Like now are they just trying to sell me something? Because it felt really good when it felt authentic, but now that I'm not sure, it feels weird. And so like I choose to believe it still, and there's just like broken HR processes, but like that's giving them the benefit of the doubt, which not everybody is going to do.
Yeah.
Well, even giving you an opportunity to like share that feedback, right? Like I think that it's like it's one thing to kind of put like feedback loops in place and welcome that kind of like commentary around like, did you have a good experience, bad experience, otherwise, right? Can you tell us specifics about what was amazing or what you would love to just flip on its head? Because like
I do those surveys on like upload your resume here. How was your interaction on our website today? I want that data. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No,
like,
it's
okay. I had an idea I had to go.
No,
like nobody asks the job applicants.
Yeah,
like. But it's 2 thumbs down, foreshadowing, but
totally. Well, and I think it's like a continuous improvement mindset too of, right? Like, it's not like you just like create a really awesome experience and then you leave it, because then you're going to fall behind on the curve and people are going to be disrupting in the industry and you're not going to be seen as, you know, someone who's modern and in tune with your audience and their needs and, you know, creating something that's got a great experience to it, right? Like, I don't know. I think it's one of those things where I think there's really impactful when you can put even like a customer survey in place plus an employee survey and then look at it kind of holistically. Yeah. Are there some parallel gaps, right? Are there some things that are just big themes that we need to tackle as a business? Because so often than not, it's just kind of like, oh, we got this employee feedback and, you know, it's like, but even are we going to action it? Are we going to do something about it? Are we going to talk about it?
Right? We're going to sit on it for 7 months before we even review the data.
Right?
Well, that and even then, like, is HR even approaching the marketing team to be like, hey, so we're doing this survey? No, they're not. They're creating their own separate SurveyMonkey account. They have nobody on their team that maybe has the strength, knowledge, and understanding of data and analytics like the marketing people do, that understand how you structure the questions in themselves is going to generate all sorts of different content. And are we asking them correctly? And do you know what I mean? There's a bunch of scope definition that perhaps would, through the filter of marketing, could be very different and garner some very important insights that we wouldn't otherwise get if we're just asking the same kind of traditionally scripted HR questions, because we didn't even know that marketing could help us with this, right? And so like when we know to, like, we're not in competition with one another, we are working together on the same thing. Like, hey, I'm on the HR team and I'm tasked with putting out the employee survey this year. Great. Who's excited and knows everything about surveys? So like, let's talk together. And also like now many hands can make light work, but we can also make it awesome. Like truly awesome, right?
Well, totally. And like, I think too, when you bring the different minds together, like across departments, there's something we can, again, like bring to those kinds of projects that are different and unique. And one of the things that like marketing, I think, would bring to that project is almost like campaignizing it, right? Yes. To think about like, it's not just a single communication that's going out. There's multiple communications coming out at the right time to the right people, asking the right kind of tailored questions so we can get the type of insights we're kind of trying to derive. And then like taking all of that and being able to say like, oh, we actually had like a 70% open rate, you know, but our goal is to get to an 80% so that we, you know, meet the minimum threshold to be able to say this is like good data, right? Like, so I think there's just so much that like we can come together and I don't know, just kind of, I mean, we've had some lived experiences as well, even with like some of our clientele that do kind of consume a little bit on either side. And it's really fascinating to see how, I don't know, just how different it is when you really look at it from both sides. So,
because I don't think people even know to think like, oh, we're doing an employee survey. Okay, that's HR's job. Like, you know, and then working on the HR team, it's like, you know, stop trying to make other people do your work. And it's like, no, actually the marketing people know more about this. I just want to work together. I'm not trying to hand it off. But like, but when we sort of acknowledge and understand, like, who can I stack on my zombie apocalypse team that will help us do this even better?
You
And
definitely need a marketer on your zombie.
Yes, you do, and you do for everything. Guess what the employee handbook of incredibly boring policies turns into when you need to get a bunch of people to comply with it and read it and open it in the first place. Can we track how many people even clicked it and opened it? I don't know how to do that, but I know somebody who does. Like, you know what I mean? There's so many elements of all of that. Like when you need to get a large group of people to do a thing, which is a lot of compliance and people-driven things that, you know, you have to do in HR, right? For very basic foundational business and compliance practices. But we can campaignize them. We can make them a digital, delightful user experience. That means you get 2 clicks and you're through it and it's done digitally, and we can track that or whatever, rather than, download a thing, find a printer that works. Like there's just, even in the design of a process, right? Or of a design of how a user will experience and consume an asset, whether it's a policy or whether it's a
onboarding
survey. You got it. Yes. There's I don't think there's really anything that I do that marketing can't make better to a substantial degree.
Well, anyway, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna ask because I think it's pretty clear the potential benefits of doing this, but alas, we still have mostly silos. And I'm just thinking of I like this example of the employee survey, mostly because as a marketer, the number of employee surveys I've done that are terribly written questions that I'm just couldn't you have asked me? I could have given you immediate feedback. I actually have my friends that I have made my friends promise me that if you're doing market research, send it to me first, because I will tell you if you're going to get the answers that are helpful data or not. But we have these resources in our organization most of the time, but we're just not having this brand continuum conversation. We're not actively breaking down the silos. So are there things that you guys have seen that can help people actively break down the silos?
I mean, I think it's easier almost for people to think about it when you have a project that kind of lives in the gray. I'm thinking of even this is kind of a unique one because I actually have lived experience kind of on the HR and the marketing side of this, but is when you're building an employment brand and you're trying to, attract more amazing people to come join your company. That's a weird project where I've seen it come to the marketing side as here, marketing, you are accountable for this, create a brand that is going to help us attract top talent, especially in industries where, maybe it's hard to attract and retain those folks. Maybe it's tech or something that's hard to find.
To the Peloton example, because, we're going to invest all this money in marketing to build this beautiful website, employment brand, profiling our careers page, but then our job descriptions are maybe kind of poorly written because, we didn't collaborate with marketing for that. They're not even standardized. By the time somebody goes to the recruitment process to experience, what does it actually mean to upload my resume? It is just abysmal. And so it's wow, thanks for all that great work you've done to attract people here. They don't even want to apply now because the other part of that kind of where the technical behind the scenes baton is handed off to maybe the HR functional process. If we're not going all the way through the experience, from start to end, and we don't have now I've just diluted all the work that you've done. And that's not fair to marketing, right? So so working together, it's not to place blame on one or the other, but we can do better on one side and we can do better on both sides. And how do we connect it together to make sure that the whole end-to-end user experience that we both know is going to touch marketing and HR, how come we're not working together as a mandate to see it all the way through, to their very first day, end of the first week, right? Not just build our employment brand and careers website, but then what about the attraction and recruitment and selection and hiring and onboarding process? That should flow through as a continuation of that effort.
Yeah. Well, and ultimately too, when you're creating the employment brand, it's all about really bottling up that story, right? What is the story you're telling as an organization, right? How are you bringing your people to the forefront of that story to wave your flag for you and tell their own lived experiences, right?
Yeah.
Because often it's a combination of all these different things that start to really elevate up what does it really look like to work there, right? Not just what someone's put out there, but having sort of firsthand people telling their stories about career progression or telling their stories about, even just
culture
having
and
an
values
amazing
alignment.
like training and development program,
Yeah.
like whatever those things are,
Yeah.
right? Like whatever people's joys are from work. Like I think there's an opportunity there for HR and marketing to come together to like figure out what that story is. Because like if we go in a silo and start to write that, we're probably going to miss out on all of the well-known perks and benefits that Leona's aware of, and all of the things that maybe are even just unique to like how they're going to work within their own like subunit, right? So there's so much I think that we have to like break down that silo and like come together and just start to like discover the story together and create it together. Because if I go in a silo or Leona goes in a silo, it's kind of like just a missed opportunity.
It's a big missed opportunity. That's exactly it. Like,
yeah,
just looking in between all that to be like, oh, you're making an employee survey? I did that once. Okay, what did you do? Okay, like whatever that thing is, right? But there's always the opportunity to sort of level it up, and then we're not duplicating effort either. So it's also like a productivity hack,
right?
Well, and I think that is actually one of the concerns maybe that people have. And you alluded to it earlier too, Leona, when you were saying, I'm not trying to like steal resources from marketing, right? Like this project, I liked how you said, Chelsea, how this a project that lives in the gray.
It does.
This project is a company project. We know why as a company we want to achieve this thing. Right? And so we have resources as a company. And what resources can enable this project to be the most successful it can? And that doesn't mean that we have to like completely break reporting structures and titles and departments and things like that. But we create these like permeable boundaries so that like, yes, I might be the expert in this email marketing, right? But like in our company efforts, my expertise in email marketing might add value to other things. And I'm also a resource for that because that just makes sense.
I think marketing and HR have this thing in common where we can be very easily like sort of typecast into like a thing you do, right? Like if I had $1 every time somebody said to me, well, you're HR, so you should, whatever that thing is, right? And it's like, and sometimes if we flip that on its head and are like, here's a project that we're working on. What do I not know about you that you could bring to this and make it awesome? Here's what we're trying to achieve. And then if I ask 3 or 4 different people the same question, regardless of their skills or background, I bet you everybody could bring something very cool and awesome to make it happen, you know, with like skill sets and specialties we didn't even know about.
It's interesting because like when I was working at a startup, and I mean in startups I feel like there's more permeable boundaries, right? Because people we need people to do stuff, so do what you can do. But marketing wrote all the job descriptions. So like HR would say we need to hire for this. We would quiz them on like, okay, what are with the personnel? Who are they going to be working with? What's the personality, right? Like it's like we're creating a persona and then we write a job description for it. And because the job descriptions are going to be on the website, we make sure that the narrative and everything is consistent with the rest of the website. So it sounds like the same thing. Would most small businesses have marketing writing a job description? I don't know. But it's a really great example of like, where is that? Even if you want to just call it flair. Right? There's a lot of really boring job descriptions out there. Right?
And there's a lot that don't make any sense also. Like, because there's a lot of job descriptions right now, and there's a lot of job descriptions that are like, this isn't a job description for one person. It's actually a whole IT department. Like, do you know what I mean?
I mean, I personally have a habit of reading marketing job descriptions and then responding to the hiring manager, like asking them questions about what does this mean.
Good luck.
Are you expecting us going to apply for this? This is completely out to lunch.
Exactly.
They can
but like this is the point, right? There's value that can be added, but also let's talk a little bit about this concept of maybe what might seem like not, I don't have a good word for it, but I'm going to call it not well-defined value, right? So marketing has experience in campaigns. You are doing an employee survey. As an HR professional, maybe you couldn't just say like, oh, campaigns, that's a value that's going to add to that. So this is what I mean by like an undefined value. But by getting those types of resources into the conversation, you allow the value to like expose itself. So to some degree, it feels like it has to be like very intentional from a like culture perspective in order to invite that kind of collaboration together.
And that's also the experience I want for people. Like if I've just been tasked with survey our group of employees, well, the first thing I want to do is I want them to be excited about it so that by the time they actually get the email link, that they are really looking forward to contributing and that they feel like heard and valued and that they know what's going to happen next. I don't want it to be a surprise when they get this email. I don't want it to land in their spam filter, right? So the work that we do before that, including a campaign, including kind of parsing out what are we trying to achieve, structuring our questions, just all, not even the technical piece aside, like the ultimate success of that survey, if really I want to meet those things, I don't think I can do them alone.
Totally.
I'm like having this experience of strategy needs a team.
Yeah.
Once we have like very good clarity on what that is and what each person can do to contribute to that strategy, then sure, I could take that away and do my piece. But at the end of the day, the result is collaborative.
Yes.
Well, I think it comes back to like knowing people on your team, right? And like knowing what their unique abilities are and like where they naturally shine or where their natural tendencies are. And I think being vulnerable to like look at yourself and recognize like where your gaps exist and where other people can fill those gaps, right?
Yeah.
So that you can focus more on the things that you're great at, right? And so I think that there's an element of that too. And I mean, we even had recently an experience where we had a ton of really cool, awesome ideas come out of a retreat. And, like we have an amazing group of people who want to be able to like spearhead some of those things, right? And some of those things, there's an immense amount of opportunity for different people to step up to the game and lead those initiatives, especially when it's something that speaks to them deeply, right? Because if it speaks to you deeply and it's something that you have some lived experience in or have a way you're going to contribute to it, I just think you're going to be a lot more excited. And then, I think if you're a small, nimble culture too, I think you're more open-minded to breaking down the silos and bringing more of those people to the table that may seem like unusual suspects or, like we're bringing HR to the table, we're bringing IT to the table, we've got a vision, right? But yeah, not every company is like that, but I think it's cool when I think you can take a moment to not just be working like on the business or in the business, I guess, but like elevating yourself up to like spot those kinds of opportunities for like innovation or collaboration, like from a different perspective, right? Of like pulling upon these people who probably don't normally work together to kind of see like what kind of unique experiences do you have in education or lived, experiences from your career, whatever it might be, like to come together and like create those collisions, if you will, right? Where it's like, I think that's kind of where magic can happen in organizations when you start to just kind of break it down and almost like cherry pick projects that are ripe for innovation or change or, just like let it take itself where it will, if you will.
Just like the crazy stupid marketing show.
Right.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So
well, and I think I've always loved the concept of like the creative collision. Right. And it's something I've like heard in relation to like the argue for working in office is that it creates this opportunity for creative collisions, which are kind of, they're not intentional, right? Like I didn't have an intention of creating a solution to this problem today, but like we were having this conversation and this just came up. I also think it's possible to create the situations that allow that in a virtual environment. I am not for or against scenarios. I am a hybrid, do what works for you kind of person. But like when we roll that up to the level of intention, right? Like we have an intention of using team for strategy, we have an intention of creating collisions. Like I remember something that's just standing out for me right now is I remember when Disney, which is one of my favorite companies ever, mandated their people to go back to the office because that's how you be creative. And I was like, that sounds very creative. That sounds like doing it the old way. And that's one way. But is that being creative? Like being creative would be looking at new ways to do that. But there's like so many opportunities, again, when you ignite the different strengths within your team, be able to contribute at that level. And I think one of the things that is also highly underappreciated is that, like, okay, so what happens if you put a marketer and an IT person in a room together?
Don't send the survey to a list full of like terminated employees. First of all, like it's only active users. Like I can tell you what happened.
That's not even something I would think of. Like, but this is the point: is that like that unique combination of people, especially if they're not generally in conversation with each other, is going to create a new idea. There's like almost a guarantee that it's going to create a new idea.
Totally. And even just through sharing like what you're doing, they're probably going to spot like a million opportunities to be like, why don't you automate that? And why don't you make that more highly personable by, tying it into some of our CRM data? Like they might come up with weird ideas that might be wonderful, right? Or even like, even if you wanted to create like a productized experience, right? Like say you wanted to create like an online tool or something for prospects or for whatever, right? Like they might be able to help you dream up something really crazy and really out of the box, and and you may not even know it's possible. So yeah.
I'm just thinking of that yes and game where you like say a thing and then the next person's like, yes, and this. And like when you get, I mean, the whole argument for diversity of thought, right? Is that like, I'm going to talk about this again in a personal scenario. So I remember hiring for a marketing. So I was the VP of marketing, hiring for a marketing manager. And I got this resume and my boss, the CEO, was like, this one sounds great. I was like, this one sounds exactly like me. Like to the degree where our experiences, not with the same companies, but like industries, was almost identical. And I was like, I don't need another me. I need someone who knows different stuff than me, because then they can challenge my thoughts and we can come up with better things. But if I have somebody who is like exactly like me and just says yes to everything I say, then like, one, that's boring. Two, we are never going to achieve anything different, right? We're going to achieve the same. And this is why I love like talking to developers and having conversations with salespeople and talking to parents on the school ground and janitors, and like everybody, as far as I'm concerned, has a valuable perspective that I don't have, which means
their craft.
And how do we get into those conversations where when you feel comfortable enough to share that? But I also think that comes from the intention. Do you feel that you believe the person you're in a room with wants to know what your expertise is? Or were you like forced to do this project together and neither of you really, really want to?
Well, totally.
Because that would be the first time that happened to anybody.
Right? Yeah,
so,
I think,
go ahead, Chelsea.
No, I was just going to say too, like, I think one thing too that we haven't really touched on too much is just like creating like an emotional connection with whoever those people are, right? Like we're talking a lot about like brand experience and, a continuous experience that, is elevated and feels right. But like, I think too, it's like almost like when we kind of get back to almost like the idea of like architecture as well a little bit. There's elements of like too, like you have these like really impactful moments, I think, throughout any journey. Yeah. And it's almost like kind of like doubling down in some of those moments, right? Like if we can look at like psychology and where those moments are like most impactful, right? If we think about like onboarding is huge, right? And so it's like, I think too, like if you can create like, like a deeper like emotional connection in those moments and make it like kind of a wow standout experience where they're like, holy, like I've never been onboarded like that before. Like just got taken out for a lunch or a cool experience, like a physical experience. And now I'm like getting walked through like how everything works and getting added to these collaborative tools. I feel like really integrated, or like whatever your onboarding might look like. Like I think there's, because sometimes people might say too, like, this seems like a daunting thing, like I'm looking at like the idea of like, at every corner, I'm having this like great experience. And how do you create that? How do you master that? Right. And I don't think it's like a final destination, but it's more about like cherry picking, almost like the biggest impact moments too. And
I think with all the tools and technology and stuff that we have out there now, it is very seductive to just automate everything. Just send everybody a message, just send it to them on Slack, just email a thing. And it's like, but what about, this is actually a really big moment if this is the person you want to extend that job offer to. So I'm actually I'll send them an email, but I'm going to tell them like, I need to talk to you. When can I give you a call? Because I want to actually speak to you personally.
Totally.
And be like, congratulations, we would like to offer you the job. Like, also I don't want to send you an offer letter that could be spam and you don't even know what's coming. So there's a reason that I want to do that. But like, that's a big moment. You know what I mean? Like,
you're right. Celebrate that moment with that person.
And so recognizing like, there's lots of things that we can automate and we can personalize very well, and we should. But also, there's lots of moments that we should still just pick up the phone if we can, or talk to that person. You know what I mean? Talk to them. And this would be better as a conversation. When can we chat? Right? Like being able to know the difference between two of those, and being able to dedicate, people and resources and in a capacity that can do that well and create that experience as ambassadors and channelers of that brand or business.
Totally.
I think it's about seeing those interactions as an experience worth investing in, right? So
exactly.
It's more than just a thing to do, right? Like, sure. As part of the job application process, you have to make an offer to a person. They have to accept an offer. They're the parts of the checkbox that need to be checked. But how do you want that to go down? This is your opportunity to like close the deal on them getting excited to come work here, right? Like, are we treating it like it's that opportunity, or are we treating it just like it's another thing we have to do? And I do think that is very much tied into your brand culture, right? Like, what do you believe as an organization? Because it doesn't necessarily have to be that, right? But you could tell viewers when Leona is talking about it, like, you got so excited about it. This is something you believe in creating an experience for. And that might not be the experience that everybody decides to create an experience for, but that's what realize stand out.
Like it's
tell people something.
Purpose and intent, right? Just applying purpose and intent to that moment. And like, marketing does that very well in unexpected ways to delight. And I believe that HR is very ripe with those opportunities too. And those lost opportunities, like, collectively can go in the disengagement route, at a time in life when maybe engagement's tanking for a variety of reasons. Like, I don't know, right? Like, maybe that's one of those things that if we just shift the needle a little bit on a couple of like little things, going back to the basics, like, there could be some pretty big untapped potential there.
And it doesn't even have to cost any more money, I think, is the point. Like, that's such a great example. Like, you're paying for the phone, you're paying for the ATS, right? So sure, the ATS could send that. You're paying for this resource, or someone can make a phone call. It doesn't cost your organization any additional money. It's not even probably going to cost you any more time for that person, right? Because they have management of the system stuff that they would have to do if they did it that way. And so it is really just about that intention of saying, like, how do we do this here? And when you extrapolate that, how do we do this here, to all of the departments?
And you do it well,
That's what the brand experience continuum is.
Right? Well, totally. And so much of that really kind of comes down to, I love what you were saying about it doesn't always cost something, right? It doesn't have to be like a financial cost to the business always. It's like, even just like having really consistent, clear communication and having a lot of knowledge about who you're talking about, knowing when to like weave in specifics. specific things you know about like their family, their friends, like the concerts they love, like just allowing them to feel like they're seen beyond, just another client, or like building a deeper relationship and a connection with someone goes a long way, right? So it's not, I don't know. And I think just like being empathetic to people's needs, right? Like it's easy to kind of just sit on the other side of your email and quickly, banging out a update or doing something over here. But it's like, no, like you sometimes need to take a couple moments sometimes to like take a step back and really think about like, what are they dealing with within their company right now, right? Like, what do they really need, right? And I think just being open to having those kinds of conversations with people and using radical candor, right? And like not being afraid of like what's on the other side, right? If we actually have like a real conversation that's like taking our barriers down. So I think there's a lot to be said just about really consistent, clear communication and just being in tune with your audience and their needs, right? Like it sounds so basic, but so effective on both sides, right? Whether you're talking about employees or customers. So
100% of employees are people. So.
Right.
Well, and I was just thinking like so many people I know who are recruiters who just have these like huge lists of people they're supposed to recruit, and they're like constantly recruiting and their inbox is always slammed. And like, how would that feel if that was you? Like that, I've had people explain it to me and just feel stressful. What could we do? Is there something that marketer who has an extra 2 hours a week could do to improve that? Maybe not, but like are we asking the question? Are we being curious about how we can contribute to our coworkers' ways of being that way? If it would take me 2 minutes to do something that would make someone's life like infinitely easier, wouldn't it just be easier if we both did that?
Yeah, even not, like you said, even not being afraid to ask the question,
right. Yeah. Okay, I want to touch on one more quick thing because we've hinted to it a couple of times, I think, but we talked about it when we were prepping for the episode, and we talked about this concept where maybe people are looking at a continuum as if it is a straight line, a linear experience as such. But Chelsea, how are you envisioning this in terms of a shape?
Well, I mean, like for me, I almost think of it as, it's like a kind of like a continuous flow, right? So it's like if your employees, again, are feeling taken care of, they're feeling stoked to be a part of the organization, the culture, everything you're about, they're sort of on the one side. And, and then if they're feeling all those things and excited to be a part of it, then ideally they're giving some of that back to the clients, right? So I think it's like a cyclical loop, if you will, and almost kind of like an infinity loop of connection. And I think when your people are feeling that kind of like deep connection to your brand, they emanate it, right? Like they share it with everyone they're interacting with, whether it be other fellow employees, right? Whether it be clients, whether it be your partners or other people they're interacting with within the community, right? So I just think it's kind of an ongoing continuous flow, if you will. And I think there's so many different moments in there that can like make or break that chain.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's why I think it's so cool when marketing and HR and even other departments start to collaborate, because otherwise, like, how do I even know what Leona's doing? How can it be connected, right? If we don't talk, which we're lucky, we're in the same office. We just can turn around and talk all the time, which is great. But if we don't talk, then it's like she could be giving a totally different experience over here. And then we could be telling people, well, we want you to actually act this way with clients. And this is the way we want you to onboard clients. And this is the way, we treat our clients. And it could just be really disconnected and really disjointed, right? And people go like, oh, okay, well, that just doesn't feel very authentic and very true, right?
Yeah.
Like,
because the alignment piece is important at all stages, whether it's employees aligning with values, or whether it's potential clients, customers, consumers aligning with value, brand, all those that alignment of the person experiencing and the organization of the brand, like that is common across, right? So those points of interconnectivity I think are
huge,
right?
Yeah. It's interesting. So I'm gonna be a huge nerd here for a second, because this summer I was in Switzerland and we went to CERN, which has the Large Hadron Collider.
Cool.
It runs on magnets. So the way that they speed up the particles through the thing is through magnets. And so they go in and they're going very slow, but then they use the system, the loop, to generate velocity to create these collisions. And like, this is what I'm envisioning when you're talking about this infinity loop, because if you get a break, there's like, there's no velocity to be held there, right? Like maybe you haven't completely shattered the experience, but like you can't create the velocity. It won't happen. Every time it gets to that break, it will slow down again.
And to get the momentum back once it's broken is difficult, right? To like
Totally.
it creates inertia.
Right. But if it is just a continuous loop, then you can continuously increase the velocity of stuff in the system. And this is a really interesting way to look at the benefit of investing into the brand experience continuum, because if you can't identify where those broken pieces are, you're probably not increasing momentum anywhere.
Or maybe you could be doing really well, but something else is broken in your loop, like your careers website and your employment brand is great, but by the time people go to apply and something's broken on this side, right?
Yeah, and then you're wondering, like, how come more velocity isn't flowing through the system? Yeah, because it's broken, folks. And so it's something interesting to look at if one of the pains in your business happens to be that you don't feel like there's enough volume flowing through the system. There's probably something broken somewhere. And I'll also tell you, as a marketer, it's really interesting for me because like people come to me and their problem is marketing. And I'll look at it and I'll be like, this is not a marketing problem. This is an ops problem. This is an HR problem. This is the sales. But and more, it's not even like, I don't want to make it like one of the departments. The problem is this is a connection problem, right? Part of the systems are not connecting to each other. So this is a connection problem, but I need both sides of the connection to play the game. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So whether it's marketing connecting with HR or HR with tech or sales with marketing or sales in HR, I don't know. The point is that like, how are we looking for assessing those connection points for their like connection health? And if we're not, it's, I mean, I can't imagine that it's not impacting the velocity of stuff going through the system.
Well, totally. Because like the second people have to like wonder, like, how do I do this? Or it's like not easy or something is just, I mean, out of alignment, right? Like it just stops the flow, right? Or the second someone doesn't feel like enabled in their role to go like make something right, they don't feel empowered or they don't feel like they have the authority or the tools or the approval, whatever it might be, it like stops that inertia, right?
Instead, like your experience with Peloton.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. Yep.
You got to that moment and it was like this weird record scratch, right? Because like,
then you're questioning like, do I want to work there? Do I want to continue?
Do I still believe all these things I believed? Or is now it just a fitness app, right? Like, and like, this is not what you want, right? You don't want to now just be in like the world of fitness apps, right? Like you want to be Peloton. Peloton, if anyone from Peloton is listening and you'd like to talk about it, I would be super open to having that conversation. I am not going to be shy about it because I still love my Peloton. And I would still recommend Peloton from an at-home workout fitness experience. But it's just, this is the point. When we're not being intentional about all of the loop, then it could damage any other part of the loop.
Correct.
Totally. And it can have like a irreversible reputational damage as well, right? Depending on how profound it is, right? Like, it's like if people get in and they're promised the promised land, it's going to be amazing, right? And then they get in and it's like, oh,
you don't even have
I
a
just
computer
changed
or
providers.
Phone. You can sit here for 4 days.
Why? This is the worst, right? It's around. Like word of mouth is powerful on both sides, right? Like it can do a lot for your brand, but it can really harness. Yeah, it could be really bad as well if it gets becomes the talk of the,
the talk of the town can be a pro or a con, depending on what the talk is.
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh, all right, Chelsea and Leona. Well, that was an hour that flew by in wonderful conversation. If there are people watching this show and they're interested in learning more about how Forward Level makes an impact in both marketing and HR, where is the best place for them to connect with you guys?
Probably through our website, or you can find either of Chelsea or I on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And if for whatever reason you have a problem with the website, you can find Chelsea and Leona on LinkedIn and tell them about it.
Yes.
Because they're all about the loop.
Exactly.
It's true.
Oh, well, thank you guys so much for sharing in the conversation today. It was great. I think lots of great examples of how this brand experience really is a continuum and not a line and not a silo. For those of you who are watching today who did not get in the chat, I know you have thoughts. So the good news is it's not too late to get into the chat. If you want to kind of debrief your thoughts and then get back in here and ask questions, we will totally come back to it and answer any of the questions that you have, or reach out to me, reach out to Chelsea, reach out to Leona, get in the conversation, because if the brand experience and how that can operate as a continuum instead of as a bunch of disconnected processes is something that's important to you right now, highly encourage you to not let this be the only conversation you participate in about it, specifically because you didn't participate in the conversation, you just consumed. Get in the conversation. Continue in the conversation. It's a conversation continuum, folks, so stay in the conversation. That is where you can actually find your ideas, your insights, your ways to making these things work for you. So with that, I would like to thank Chelsea and Leona again for your time and your wonderful knowledge sharing today. And until next time, everybody, permission to do you.
Thank you.